Welcome to Friends with Fertility, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of fertility, reproductive health, and all the emotional journeys that are in between. I'm your host, Elizabeth King, a fertility expert dedicated to providing you with the knowledge, support, and inspiration you need on your path to parenthood. Whether you're just starting out, exploring your options, or looking for solidarity and advice, we are here for you. Let's embark on this journey together and turn uncertainty into empowerment and make friends with fertility. Let's get started. Hi, Sam. Welcome to Friends with Fertility.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you. I cannot believe that you've been doing what you're doing since 1998.
I have
That
been.
is amazing. I feel like what an amazing honor to be able to be doing this for so long and to be the trailblazer, so to speak, before the rest of the world got on board.
Yes, I feel very blessed to have been able to have the calling that I've had to work with the people and couples and families that I've had the opportunity to work with over the last 26 years. It's been truly amazing.
So tell us how you got into doing this, because everyone has a story that led them to what they're doing. So let's hear yours.
Yes, mine started 26 years ago after the birth of my eldest child, who everything was okay, but I felt like decisions were made for me that I wasn't really a part of making. And so to
like
that
what,
end,
for example?
like I was on bed rest for 10 weeks. And so then I was told that I needed to have my labor induced. So my labor was started artificially. And because I have high blood pressure, especially as high as it was, I was told I needed to have an epidural. Again, not to suggest that I wouldn't have chosen that route.
Sure.
To have that decision taken from me felt invalidating in terms of allowing me to have my journey. He was vacuum extracted. He struggled after his vacuum extraction. We struggled to get feeding started and to navigate the feeding journey. And I thought, I just feel like there has to be another way that things can be easier for people, or at least they can have somebody who's there to advocate for them, because we don't know what questions we need to ask when we've been down the path.
So at that time, were you considered working as a doula? Okay.
And so that's ultimately how I started. I started as a doula. I started attending births. I have, in the last 25 plus years, had the honor of attending the births of over 500 babies.
Wow, that's awesome.
It is truly humbling to have been invited to those births. And I've worked alongside tens of thousands of people as they start their journeys, whether it's through childbirth education classes, whether it's newborn preparation classes for intended and adoptive parents who don't need a full class about how baby comes out. That's not necessarily relevant to them, except perhaps how the birth may impact baby's first days and weeks. But all of it. It's just remarkable.
That's so fun. I on the opposite side, I am a bereavement doula, so I see a lot of the other sides of these experiences. But on the fertility side, I feel like I can relate because I get those ultrasound pictures and the positive pregnancy tests and all of that. Just like you cannot stop smiling. And I think with the 500 plus babies being born, it's just like you're beaming with excitement about these beautiful souls coming into the world. And what an honor, like you said. So how has this evolved over the years, and now kind of what you're doing more specifically within the community that you're in?
Right. So after doing my doula training, I did a childbirth education course through a local hospital and college. They ran a concurrent program so that it was really truly an in-depth program. And then I taught for a hospital for about 10 years. And then about 12 or 14 years ago, a friend of mine who's a local midwife said, "Are you doing work specifically for the 2S LGBTQIA plus community?" And I said, "Well, no, everybody's welcome." And she said, "Why not?" And I always credit her with with being the impetus for the shift in my thinking that yeah, there are a lot of doulas out there. There's a lot of childbirth educators out there, but the queer community is really underrepresented, and they deserve to have someone who's got the experience, who's got the knowledge behind them. So I shifted the focus of babyREADY. It's now almost exclusively, I wouldn't say even exclusively, primarily queer focused. It's
Mhm.
focused on queer family planning. And then I did some fertility coaching classes so that I could learn from fertility experts about how to coach clients through the fertility journey, what kinds of things they're looking for, when do they need to take things to another level and involve another care provider, what kinds of things can they do for themselves. I work alongside intended and adoptive parents as they're creating their families and figuring out what are the best steps forward. And so I get to still be a part of the baby world, but I get to take it under a different umbrella, which keeps it fresh and exciting and fun all the time.
Yes, very much so. And I think, to your point, it's underrepresented. I will also say the amazing world we live in today has really brought it pretty far in a quick amount of time, I would say, which is great. All that to say, I feel like people still don't understand the challenges and the expense and the other aspects that that community goes through, that you may complain about it from the straight heterosexual groups that say, "Oh, IVF's so expensive and this and that." But imagine if you didn't even have an option, right? You
Mhm.
knew going into it that that was your only option, was to have a surrogate, or that was your only option to do a egg donor or something of that nature. And it just puts in these different narratives that you don't really expect to have. I think especially with, I would imagine, young kids that are knowing that they're different in this way and now being very accepted compared to when you and I were growing up, but also knowing they don't really, it's not a concept at that young age of what will come if I need to build a family. And I think it is becoming more normalized now that we have so many families that have been built in
Mhm.
an unusual, non traditional way, so to speak, which is
Mhm.
awesome. And I tell people all the time that you have the ability to make your family what you want it to be. It doesn't matter where, whatever, which is amazing and so beautiful. But I think having the empathy and the understanding and meeting those people, and I say those people because I can't say the full LGBTQ, and that's my only reason for referring to it that way, is because I know that I'm always going to mess it up. But that meeting them where they are and
Mhm.
having that compassion and empathy of like, wow, it's a whole nother experience, even when you have somebody to help you navigate it, right? And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I would imagine it being so priceless to have that person, not only to help you with the process of going through the fertility situation and knowing, okay, what to do, where to go, and whatever, even though there's many, many more resources now than there ever have been, thank God.
Mhm.
Um, but then carrying them through their whole experience of childbirth and postpartum, because again, that looks very different for a couple that is same sex versus a heterosexual couple, or even somebody who's doing it on their own. And
Right.
how do you learn to meet them where they are when your experience may have been different? Because I find for myself as a coach since 2008, that was always really important for me to be able to understand and be able to have that sort of, our story may not be exactly, but I can understand to a degree of where you're coming from. So how do you kind of get into their hearts and minds, so to speak, to meet them where they are?
That's a great question, and I think part of it comes from how they reach out to me. So some people will reach out to me through my website, and they just want to do a 15-minute consultation, quick. Let's find out what services I offer, and I can find out from them. And that's really the easiest way because I can ask them some key fundamental questions about what are your dreams about family building, and what steps have you taken? What steps are you thinking about taking? Because I think that one of the things that gets kind of forgotten in the journey for individuals, queer individuals who are thinking about wanting a family, is we all sort of start from childhood with people planting seeds about when you are a parent someday.
Mhm.
And as children, often it's assumed that that will be in a cisgendered heterosexual relationship because we don't know what our children are going to do or look like. And then we get to a point in our lives where we are acknowledging to ourselves, often before anybody else says anything or learns anything, but we're acknowledging to ourselves that we are not fitting that mold anymore. We are queer. We need something else in our lives to shift because we don't match the picture that we had in our minds. So can we become parents? How do we become parents? So we have to navigate that emotional journey. And so that's a big part of talking with my clients is how do you envision this unfolding for you now? Lots of people with a uterus that I talk to who are in two uterus relationships have zero interest in carrying a child, whether they are a lesbian, whether they are non-binary, whether they're trans or somewhere else in the gender fluid spectrum. They just don't want their uterus used for that. So they've put that away. But now they have to acknowledge and wrap their head around being not biologically related to whatever child is brought into their family, and how will they navigate those emotions. So how do I do it? I start by asking some very significant questions in the softest way I can possibly ask them so that they can answer in a way that they feel that I'm treating them with the dignity and respect that they deserve so that they feel comfortable moving forward. And then we just take it step by step.
Right. That's amazing. And I think it goes to point out that any type of I always say, coaches know that you're meant to be a coach. The way that you approach people, the way that people come to you and want to tell you their story or sit with you and explain what's happening in your heart, that's something that you're drawn to. And it sounds like this is very natural for you. And this community feels very comfortable coming to you, which is amazing.
Mhm.
So, educate us real quick because I just mentioned it myself about because I didn't even know there was a two associated with that now.
Mm.
So, 2SLGBTQIA plus. What are
Yes.
all the things?
Fair enough. And it's funny because it's not funny, but it is interesting funny in that when I do a lunch and learn, so I often get asked to come into fertility clinics and doctors' offices, midwifery practices to talk to them about working with the queer community. And that's one of the
Sure.
first things we talk about. Let's break down that acronym. The acronym 2S stands for Two Spirit. It is respecting the Indigenous communities of North America and Turtle Island and honoring that many of the people who are within that community don't necessarily perceive themselves to be specifically male or female, but they often embody both spirits of both male and female sexes. LGBTQIA is lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, gender, queer, questioning. Intersex is often what the I is for. A is asexual, aromantic, androgynous. Lots of things. So it can mean so many things. It doesn't even have a P in it for those who are polyamorous and feel that they should be part of the queer community. The plus just encompasses anything that didn't get
Sure.
said in the
Et
first
cetera, et
several
cetera, et
letters.
cetera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And I find for myself, well, like I said before, I always fear that I'm going to mess it up and say something wrong to offend someone. And so therefore, I don't even approach to say the 2SLGBTQIA plus because I'm like, I'm going to mess something up and offend somebody and I feel bad. And it's not as though I don't want to try and understand that.
Mhm.
I feel like it's similar to fertility, right? We have a million and one acronyms that
Mhm.
people need to learn and acronyms for hormones, even and whatnot. It's a whole different language to get. But at the same time, if somebody accidentally says a test wrong or something, we're not offending anybody. We're just like, oh, we need to correct you and say that's probably not what you meant, and you meant this or that or whatever. So, do you find in that community that they're quite forgiving of that, or are they very, no, this is something that, get it right, or, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that it really depends on the way that it's presented, right? If someone reaches out to me and messes up the acronym or says something incorrectly, then, if I do correct them, then are they receptive to that? What does their body language tell me? Or do the shoulders come up? Are they feeling like they've been attacked? Because I don't typically go, oh, well, you said that wrong. I
Right.
generally say, oh, it's my pronouns aren't they, and
Mhm.
and just sort of leave it at that. But if somebody has been sort of, because I think people are so, I think it, truthfully, I think it often happens out of fear. People are afraid to offend. So if they have offended, then they become defensive because they've, like any argument that we've been in, except it's not an argument. It's just simply a fact. It's just simply a fact that I'm a lesbian. I'm not straight. That's okay. If you call me straight, I'm just going to tell you I'm a lesbian, and then we're going to move forward from there. No big
Yeah.
deal.
I was just thinking as you're saying that that it's quite sad now that we do live in a world that is based on fear that we're going to offend somebody rather than just being corrected and saying, "Oh, that's okay. This is a learning
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for
Mm-hmm.
Elizabeth to know, this or that," rather
Mm-hmm.
than being so divided because really I love and welcome everybody. I just uh, for whatever reason, something has been indoctrinated into me that I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to make them feel bad. And in turn, I think that brings a bigger divide, right? Because for not for me personally, but for I think a lot of people, they don't know how to approach them, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now we're in clinics where we are sitting together in the waiting room with people that are not like us. And
Mm-hmm.
it already, if you're in a clinic, nobody's looking at each other or talking or doing anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. But
Yep.
it is more diverse than it ever has been before.
Yes.
Again, thank goodness. But at the same time, I think, how do we bring that connectivity? Because more than anything, everybody that is there together is seeking this deep love, a spiritual love of having a child, right? No
Mm-hmm.
matter whether you're gay, straight, queer, whatever you are, we're
Mm-hmm.
all after the same thing, right? So, what is your advice for people that are in that situation to really say, I'm open to us all being the
Mm.
same, or opening that conversation to say, like, how are you feeling on this journey?
Yeah.
I don't know. In a way, the vision in my head is like extending the hand for the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Right. Like, I see you. I want to have this conversation with you. I love you too. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't know about your journey, and I don't want to continue to have our world divide us anymore. I really want to understand.
And that's why I always tell people, ask questions. Ask, if you're sitting in a waiting room, there's a bunch of you in there and everybody's looking anxious, just say, oh, I hate that this space makes me so anxious all the time. Are you feeling anxious too? Like something really open-ended that they can interpret. And if they're not, and if they just sort of smile and nod, then understand that maybe today they anticipate they're getting bad news. So maybe it's not you, that's maybe the situation that's brought them into the space. But just asking questions. Oh, who are you here with? And ask them to introduce themselves. And hi, I'm Elizabeth. You are. Who'd you come with
Right.
today? That kind of thing. When we ask questions and we seem interested, anytime with anything in life, whether it's fertility, whether it's classes we're taking at school, whether it's the jobs we do, if we get asked a question in such a way that it sounds like someone's truly interested in learning about us, most of the time, most of us are excited to talk about ourselves. So thank you for wanting to
Absolutely.
know about me.
Right. And I always say to my kids, just be open and curious.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come with that sincerity of love, then
Mm-hmm.
people shouldn't be offended in that. And, they're too young to understand that, again, a lot of our world is unfortunately pushing us to those ways. And we have to try to bring it back together and be like, no, that's not okay. We really do love each other,
Yeah.
despite, trying to have this divide out there.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody's listening who is, on either side, whether they're straight or queer, what is it that you would suggest to them once they're starting through having somebody help them on their journey of fertility and carrying that through? To me, I feel like that's the best gift if you could have somebody that continues through with you on that whole path.
Mm-hmm.
But what advice do you give somebody who's just starting to go through any of the fertility path?
A lot of it depends on the dynamics of the couple. If it's a couple with two uteruses, I ask some questions about how they envision it unfolding. What options do they know are available to them? Have they investigated whether they, what they know about IVF and RIVF and ICI and IUI, and have they talked to their family care provider before they even go for fertility testing to do some baseline hormone blood work to know where they start, so that they
Right.
gives them a spot to kind of jump off from. I think one of the things within the queer community is that while most of us, because very few people do it with a known donor at home insemination, that kind of thing, most of us end up needing to use a fertility clinic to create our families.
Hmm.
Um, and there's costs associated with that. It's handy to know in advance what some of our baseline options are going to be when we get there, so that we can get the process started. But when we walk into a fertility clinic, unlike a cisgendered heterosexual couple who's been trying for a year and now meets the criteria to be labeled as being fertility challenged, then they go to the fertility clinic and they walk in and they assume that they're going to someone's going to find something to tell them why they're not conceiving. Well, we walk in and as queer individuals going, well, as far as we know, everything's working okay. We're
Right.
just missing a part.
Right.
So we walk in excited. All right, we're at the fertility
Yes.
clinic. We're going to make a
We finally
baby.
made it here. Yes.
Exactly. So, and again, I do the same kind of things with two phallus carrying partners, or two people who are just not planning to carry their own child for whatever reason. And we talk about then what options are you open to? Are you open to adoption, public or private? Are you looking at surrogacy? What kinds of things are important to you about finding someone to carry a child for you? All of these kinds of things are sort of the preliminary thought process that I encourage everybody to do. I encourage everybody to see a counselor. In Canada, it's required that you do implications counseling if you are going to be using a donor of any kind, to understand what that means and what the implications are of using genetic material that's outside of the dynamics of your family. But I don't think that that's necessarily always a bad thing. I don't love that it's people are told they have to do it, but I think that there's something to be said about talking to someone who's outside of the dynamics of your relationship about how you feel about how you have to go about creating your family, but
Right.
also processing some of the trauma. Most of the queer people I've talked to have some level of trauma in their life, whether it was family or friends not accepting them, not having the benefits that they deserve through their employer. There's all kinds of different things that can come
Right.
up. So process some of that before you even get to the point that you're walking in the door and talking to the fertility clinic, and talk to a financial planner.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. So from what I'm hearing you say is have questions ready and or meet with someone like yourself
Mhm.
to tee you up to know what questions to ask and
Absolutely.
what is going to be required and or not required. I think I find a lot of times people expect it's going to be this huge long process. And I'm always like, if you're deciding you're going to go with a donor egg or a sperm, that's going to happen pretty fast.
Yeah.
Once you find who your donor is. So
Mhm.
I think just getting the perspective of somebody else who can walk you through the process and answer all your questions, I think is great. And what I'm hearing you say, where can people find you? I know you're physically in Canada, but I'm assuming
Yes.
that you, like most of us, we do a lot
Yeah.
online.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what most of my work is. Most of my work is online these days. And my website is babyready.info, because I'm attracting people who are ready to have babies. So they're babyready.info. And then I'm all over social media at babyready LGBTQ.
Amazing. I also love the work that you're doing with going into fertility clinics because I feel as much as they are great at what they do and we need them and we love them and
Mm-hmm.
support them, I feel they're not necessarily educated in the areas of having that extended education with how to relate to other people and situations and emotional situations
Mm-hmm.
that people are coming to the table with. So
Absolutely.
when you go into clinics, how are they approaching you? Is it something that we can invite clinics to reach out to you? Because I feel like it's so important. And often what I have seen is there's clinics that maybe do support more heavily the LGBTQ community. And I think a lot of times that's just word of mouth, right? People will say, "Oh, I went here." And so that continues to happen. The way that our world is going, I feel like it needs to be a universal conversation that everybody understands and everybody can talk to that community with the grace that you do. And oftentimes that comes with education. So how do you approach them and or advertise to let them know that you're around?
Anyone's welcome to reach out to me, and we can arrange something. When it's clinics that are further away, or medical practices that are further away, then I do a keynote with them through Zoom or something like that. If it's fairly local to me, then I go into the clinic and just do a presentation there. But all of them, for the most part, people tend to reach out to me and ask me if I'll do a lunch and learn with them, or I'll do a presentation with
Amazing.
them. So they want to be accommodating to all of
Right.
the clients that come in. They
Right.
just don't know what they're missing.
Right. And I was thinking about this the other day because my first initial doctor has been doing it for, a million years. And I imagine what he has seen over these
Mm-hmm.
million of years that he's been doing it is so different now than when he started initially.
Yeah.
And how amazing, and the technology, even from when I was with him, I don't know, 17 years ago, to what it is now in the technology. And he been telling me then, like, no, you got to come back. The technology is not that great now. It's such an amazing world that we live in that all of this is possible, and it's
Yes.
such a blessing. And the more that we can continue to educate each other on all aspects, I think it just brings that divide narrower and narrower and the love greater and greater for us to continue to be together as a collective. So thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? I know you said you're active on Instagram at babyREADY LGBTQ.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere else that you would like people to and your website at .info?
Yes. And
Uh,
and I'm on TikTok and LinkedIn and all of the places.
okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for being
Thank you.
here and again extending your grace to us that are not delved into that community and holding the space for everybody that is, giving them a safe area to contact you and learn and know how to get their path forward to reach their family building. I think that's amazing. I
Thank you
hope
for
you're doing
having
it for
me.
another million years yourself. So,
Thank you. Yes. Yeah,
all
me
right.
too.
Thanks so much, Sam.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Friends with Fertility. We hope that you found the stories, insights, and tips as inspiring and informative as we did. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Your friends with fertility are here for you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for updates and more fertility resources. Until next time, stay hopeful and keep believing in your journey, and know that we are sending you lots of love.